Hey, all cousins out there in Actors and Ancestors land. Welcome to the show. I just want to take the time to announce that this is our season 1 finale. And that Decolonial Clothing, an Indigenous clothing brand, has partnered with us to give a special gift to each of our guests and also to give you all a discount code on their deadly designs. I got one of their shirts back in the day and it's so cool. So that's what got them on my radar. And somewhere in the episode, you'll get a discount code. So listen for it. And also, our wonderful guest today called in from Powell River. The connection wasn't great in spots, but I know that you're going to love the story. So let's get to it. Ole, hi out there in Indian country. I am really excited about our next guest. This guest is actually my very first guest that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting in person, even though we did do a TV pilot where we worked on the same project called Hey Cousin. And it didn't go anywhere, but I was like, hey, he's on screen. I see him in the little pilot that we filmed. I mean, he is a legend among anyone that's a cinephile, and an Indian. I don't think they could call themselves a cinephile, or maybe even an Indian. Who knows if they don't know of his famous, iconic role as Thomas Builds the Fire in Smoke Signals. Yeah, that's right. You know who I'm talking about already. But they've been in so many other shows. There's more than 30 credits, iconic Canadian shows like Beachcombers. And they've shown an incredible diversity and range in acting. And I'll just pick some random stuff here, like in Black Christmas, where they played a doctor, The L Word, where they played Dr. Bell, maybe Arctic Air, where they played Dr. Gilbert, Bones of Crows, where they played Dr. Tim Watts. Just random. So there's many roles like that. I'll just say, hey, doctor, can you introduce yourself? Tell us your people, where you're from, where your ancestors come from.
Thanks, JD, for inviting me on your show. This is so great. Because I don't get to really talk a lot about, all those different little pieces. And I hadn't realized that I played so many doctor roles. Jeez, I was auditioning recently and for yet another doctor role. And I thought, I should know how to do this. Because I've been playing a doctor for quite a number of years now. Mm-hmm. So my name is Tla'amin Evan Adams. I'm from Tla'amin Nation, which is part of the Coast Salish speaking peoples near Vancouver. My community is near what's now called Powell River. And that's where I live. I actually live in my home territory. And I work as a doctor and a little bit as an actor still. I was an actor in my early life and then went back to school. So I work half-time in public health, in Indigenous public health for the First Nations Health Authority of BC. And I work half-time as an associate dean in a new medical school. And that's my work. It's pretty exciting. And I'm kind of in the last quarter of my career, I guess you could say. I'm thinking about retirement. I'm old now. People meet me now like little kids and they'll go, oh, you got older. So yeah, that was a long time ago. I played Thomas.
And it's great too, because you still see it. For the people out there just listening, I mean, Evan, Dr. Evan, can I call you Dr. Adams?
No,
Evan?
No, call me Evan.
Evan, okay. Evan's actually wearing some nice glasses, and they remind me a bit of Thomas in the show, which is great. And that role, again, everyone in Indian country has seen this. It's spun off countless memes, the Hey Victor memes, little bits about bad wig. that iconic bad wig that was in there, but everyone loves the movie itself. And honestly, I just have to say it has one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard in Indigenous film, and I wrote it down here just to make sure that I get it right. It is your character. You say, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV. This came out in 1998, and it definitely had a lot of truths then. I was hoping that you could reflect on what that meant then versus what that would mean now.
I have to go back and ask Sherman Alexie, who wrote Smoke Signals, who wrote the screenplay, and the characters were based on characters from his novels who wrote that line, because I kind of remember it being just kind of an ad hoc line. So whether it was me improvising, which I did very little of actually, because Sherman's such a good writer that you actually want to do it pretty word perfect, or if it was him, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was all completely him. And it's hard for me to be Thomas. People have said, "Oh, can you be Thomas like at our fundraiser?" It's like, well, actually, no, because someone else writes those lines. I'm not that clever or wise or interesting. So yeah, that line, I think it's pretty cute and people seem to resonate with it. I just feel really lucky. You know, when you're an actor, you do lots of shows that nobody notices, and then I don't know. I feel lucky that some people remember smoke signals. That's so great. There are worse things to be remembered for, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why I brought that up is because I remember growing up. I mean, I'm, in my 40s now, and watching all of those terrible shows that used to be, my mushum, my grandfather, oddly enough, loved those old John Wayne movies, and with all the Italians playing natives and all that kind of stuff. And now I think it's wonderful. I just spoke to Defaro Wunatai, who's in Reservation Dogs, and talking about how there are people that they look up to, real Indigenous people on screen now, as opposed to these tropes that mostly existed back in the day. So this is the evolution of cinema, which is, again, why I'm just really thrilled that you're here.
Yeah. Isn't it exciting? I know that when I was doing Smoke Signals, I was really grateful to play just a regular guy, because I did spend part of my career doing those beads and feathers raparama, and I hated it, which is why I was spending most of my time in the theater, right? Nobody was watching the theater, but we were at least getting to tell our truth. So yeah, I think Smoke Signals definitely touched upon kind of an Indigenous reality from the last generation. It was fun.
Yeah, just seeing Native people being Native people, contemporary, that was revolutionary for a lot of folks back then too. Also getting picked for that part. I was hoping you could tell me what that process was, because essentially, like, you weren't looking to act in the movie at the time. My understanding is that you were just kind of plucked off the street almost. What was going on in that moment? What were you wearing? What was the weather like? Can you take me back to that instance?
Well, I was originally a biochemistry student. I was 17 and studying biochemistry at McGill in Montreal, and I got spotted, and I was cast in a movie like pretty fast, and it was playing the second banana, or the second lead, or kind of the third lead, really, after the two male female leads. I call it a tonto role, but I was on a movie set. I was being paid to learn. I loved it. It was way more fun than studying undergraduate biochemistry, and I just kept working. It was really nice, and Smoke Signals really kind of came at the pinnacle of that. Like kind of 12 years in, I just got a call. They were desperate, trying to cast this role of Thomas Builds the Fire, and I knew who he was from the books, because there have actually been several books with his character. And I was really quite excited. So I said, let me audition, let me show you what I can do. It's one of the few times where I felt like I could make a good showing. Lots of times you're handed things and you go, what is this? So I hear that they had hired someone and fired someone, and that they were concerned about casting this role properly. So I remember my audition being really quite brief, and them saying, "That's great. Let's do this." And I think maybe some people don't know is we did a short before we did the long.
Oh, really?
Film.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did the year before. So I got to play him for a few minutes on screen, which kind of amounted to about a week of shooting. And then I had a year to get ready, which is so unusual in film. Often, you're hired the week before or the month before. Yeah. And you don't get a lot of chance to prepare. So I did get to prepare, and I took it very seriously. It was one of my first film leads, and I wanted to do it properly. So it felt like I was in a month of exams for that month of shooting. Mm-hmm. I was trying to remember hundreds of things that I prepared, knowing that I was only going to get maybe 80% of them. during the day, and that I would face this kind of crushing defeat every day of failing to deliver on what I had hoped to deliver. And yeah, people say, was that fun? It's like, no, that was not fun playing Thomas. That was really hard.
Wow. Well, I mean, it paid off though. I can just imagine this other person that got fired. I mean, that is one of those things where they got to be looking back going, oh my gosh, that could have been, this thing that's shot me into the stratosphere. Who knows? And that's this business too, right? You never know. You never know what is going to explode and what's going to just completely fizzle out.
That's right. And you never know how you're going to be seen. Like you sometimes think you've done well, but then the product shows and you look awful. Or sometimes you think you're, like, for instance, trying to be funny is really hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if you're actually nailing it, if you're actually getting there until you see it. And, and sometimes you actually are funny and you just think, and you're so relieved. So yeah, you can't, because there's so many people on the film, you can't guess how it's going to turn out, if it's going to be a masterpiece or it's going to be a piece of baloney. You just don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's baloney, sometimes it's Indian steak, fried up there. I want to go back earlier on in your life before you got into acting, to understand where you're coming from. You were raised, and your dad taught you to live off the land, right? Catching fish and things. I wonder if you can go through some of that, what that was like coming up.
Sure. I think this probably still surprises people that I grew up quite traditionally. Even though I play quite a traditional character in playing Thomas, I think some people think, oh, he's a doctor. He must have grown up with like a lot of privilege or, reading books and stuff like that. But actually, no, I grew up with a very traditional father, and my mother had been to residential school. So I think my father really felt like she had lost something or she had lost out. Like he really felt for her that she didn't know how to cook a fish when he met her. She'd hardly been on the land at all. And that's where he grew up. And he really didn't want that for me or for any of his kids. He said, this is your land. You should know this place. You shouldn't be a dum-dum about how to catch a fish. You shouldn't be the first Indian in 1,000 generations to not know a thing about where they live. So he was very firm. And I felt like all the other kids got to, sit on the couch and watch TV. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one on the water with my dad, catching fish, sleeping on the beach, literally sleeping on the beach at night.
Wow.
And he would keep me out of school a lot. I would say at least 20% of the time, like at least a day a week, he would take me out of school.
Wow.
And I would be on the land. And it actually served me well, because when I was in university, I was very disciplined and really strong. It's like, oh, reading a book is hard? No. Hunting is hard. So people are like, oh, this is so stressful. It's like, no, manning a boat during a storm is stressful.
Yeah.
This is, yeah. So actually, part of my success was because of growing up traditionally, that all of that training and toughness made me who I was, which was like, yeah, this is easy. Yeah, this is great.
I love that. Do you still have those skills? Could you just get out on a boat and then shoot?
No, I don't think so. It's been a long time, but until I went away to school. I left home when I was 14 to go to school, but until then, I really was like on the land because I had a dad who was just, that was his school life. Mm-hmm. And yeah, lots of us didn't grow up with dads. Lots of us grew up in terrible poverty.
Yeah.
Lots of us grew up in trauma, and I had some of that, but mainly I had a dad who was like really guiding me, saying, "You've got to do well on this." But he was in my other ear saying, "You're good at reading a book, so you'll probably go to university one day." And I thought that was going to be awful.
I can't help but imagine, like, with this skill set of yours, you'd be a really good contestant on like Alone or one of those survival. You got the medical degree. You've got the ability to actually live on the land. You might go far.
Well, I would always be with my dad. And later in life, when I got to my 50s and I was more comfortable and I was able to hang out with my dad, have my dad forever, it seemed like I would say to him, let's go fishing, let's go hunting. You remember when you would take me everywhere when I was a kid, and we would go, and he'd still like when I was a kid, he'd be like, wow, you're noisy when you walk through the bush. Wow, you really talk a lot when we're fishing. So part of me's confident because, I had such an early upbringing. Part of me's like, oh, you haven't done this for a while, so you better get back.
Yeah.
To it.
Well, I'm glad that even in your busy life of juggling these two different worlds, that you're dealing with these two careers, you found time to come on the show, because this has just been an elaborate ruse. It's impossible to get a face-to-face with a doctor in this province. So I'm just glad I got this rash, and I'm just going to show you.
I've had Adam Beach did that to me recently.
Oh, did he?
He just whipped it out, and could you have a look at this?
Holy shit! What? That's hilarious.
The rash, not anything else.
Okay, you scared me for a minute. Holy. Just imagine. Hey, it's good to see you again, Evan.
Look at
Here
this.
you go. Look at this thing. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Hey folks, popping in here with your Decolonial Clothing discount code. Go on their website, decolonialclothing.com, and your special code for being an Actors and Ancestors listener is ACTORS10, 10% off. Denegay, for your support, Casey and Dakota. You guys are cool. All right. Speaking of two worlds, you are now you're a queer icon, an Indigenous icon. Frankly, when you were coming up, the world was a very different place towards both of these people, and you being so proud of who you are, your experiences. That is incredibly brave. Also, just the fact that you're so deadly. June has to be a really good month. Indigenous Peoples Month and Pride. What was your experience like being so public, I guess, about your intersecting identities in the 90s, early 2000s, when people were less accepting? And how do you think things have shifted now?
My it's not pride. It's really a lack of self-consciousness. Came from my dad, because when I was coming out, and I came out when I was in Montreal at McGill, I was 18, and I was talking to my dad, and my friend was saying, you should be honest to your family, like don't lie to them, but also know that if you're going to be out to them, they may just kick you to the curb. It happens to a lot of two-spirit people, so I was ready for that. Like they really said, be ready to kind of give up your family if that's what it takes. And so I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm coming out. I'm telling you that I'm gay. I have a boyfriend, and I'm coming out in the press. So it's not just between you and me. It's like, your friends are going to hear about this, and, maybe they're going to say something. And he said, oh, no one's going to talk about you to me. And, he stuck up for me, and I thought, and that really made me like, yeah, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. The people who love me are with me, and who cares what that stranger over there thinks of how I live my life? That's weird. So I just was myself, being an actor, being Indigenous. I never, worried about white people who were like, oh, Indigenous, that's so weird. It's like, yeah. You need to get out of my way. I'm busy here. I have a lot of stuff to do.
Get off the way, guys. Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Really, and I wasn't thinking, oh, it's the 80s. I was just thinking, yeah, there's stuff to be done, and I just want to get to it. I wasn't thinking about it being the 80s and it being early and gay pride or Indigenous pride or anything like that. I was just doing my thing. I really didn't want to suffer fools, and I still feel that way. Like I talk about my husband easily, or growing up Indigenous. Like I don't need to hide that, even if people find it maybe even hard to believe. Like you your dad made you go swimming in the winter? I was like, yeah, he thought that was our old way to make you strong. And people will be like, oh, that's weird. And it's like, yeah, well, that's what we did. So I
Made
can't
you
walk
go
you through it, honey.
That is so what? Like, I mean, I grew up in the far north, and there's no way. You can't go swimming in the winter. You got the ocean, I guess. Obviously, we're in the middle.
Yeah,
of
I'm
frozen
way here
lake.
in the south. I'm way here in the south of BC. Like you can swim in the river and survive.
Yeah,
It was part of our ceremony, like a mastery of your body. Like you can get cold and not die. Whereas, of course, further north, gosh, you get wet in the winter. That's fatal.
yeah. Tagaya, we say it's very cold. Yeah, that it's so funny with that upbringing, that armament. I mean, going into med school must have just been easy in comparison. Really thinking about it.
Actually, med school was surprisingly hard. It was a strange construct. Yeah, that sometimes I would go into an exam thinking, God, I'd rather have surgery on me than have this exam on surgery. Like you'd go in that scared, and I kept thinking, oh, this is all like made up fear. Like someone made up this exam. Like, why am I scared? Like terrified, as if I'm like standing at a cliff or being threatened with my life. Like, it's very strange. Yeah. So I'm always aware that sometimes some of the things that we face are just weird constructs that our ancestors wouldn't have been scared of, or that they would never understand. Yeah.
You're actually helping design the SFU med school, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
I just joined a medical school.
Yeah. And how are you thinking about making it more accessible?
Well, the last medical school to open in Western Canada was UBC in 1950. And 1950, Indigenous people were not citizens of Canada, and we could not even vote. And that's when they set up that school. The lives of women were very different in 1950. The push for racial equality in the US hadn't quite happened, and they still set up a med school, and they just, they set it up the way they set it up. So here it is in this modern age. We know Indigenous people need better care because they have the worst health of anyone in the whole country. We know that the number of Indigenous physicians is like 1/10 of what it should be. And so we're just going to make it different. And of course, the world's different now, especially after COVID, right? There's this huge health crisis. So basically I'm helping to train the next generation of doctors, and we're hoping to do it in a way, responding to the public, saying we need more family doctors. We want doctors who are more sensitive to who we are as people. We don't want to be hurried. We don't want so many pills pushed on us. Like, we just want care in a different way. So that's what we're responding to.
I imagine you being a public figure in many ways and still being this doctor, because Indigenous people, we've all had a contentious relationship with the medical system historically to now. It must make some of your clients feel a bit more at ease knowing that it's you, the one that's going to be helping them. It's more of a human element instantly.
I hope so. Sometimes for Indigenous people, the right physician is an Indigenous physician. They're just going to get where they're coming from. But also part of it is, that they have someone on their side who's in the system and who knows the system. So I can, advise them, not just be sympathetic to where they're working from, but advise them and say, this is how it's going to go. And even things like with the Indigenous residents, like the doctors who are doing further training to differentiate themselves into their specialties, that they're going to face racism. Like we've tracked many dozens, maybe even hundreds of Indigenous medical residents, and they've all said they face racism like they've never faced within the system, like within the medical training system. So going forward, I've warned every single Indigenous medical resident, it's inevitable. You're going to face a racist in the middle of your training. You're going to find it very disturbing, maybe even discouraging. But I'm warning you, I'm forearming you. Don't get discouraged. It's going to happen. But don't worry, come and tell me. I will help. And we've all been through it. Isn't that terrible? Yeah. That it's inevitable that we're going to face racism. But it's important to say things that are, it's the truth. I wish it wasn't that way. And so, we all have to be ready for it. And my dad used to say things like, at one time in your life, someone's going to try and rob you. Like literally try and steal your stuff or maybe even hurt you or hurt your family.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to stick up for yourself. So it's that kind of same idea. He wasn't saying be scared of life. He was just saying at some point in your life, you'll have to stick up for yourself. So be ready. So that's what I feel like I have to say to Indigenous trainees and sometimes to Indigenous patients. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry the system is.
I find that it is tragic. It speaks a lot to our histories, but also in a way there's also hope, because much like your father, I remember one of my cousins, teaching me to fight and being like, you have to know how to fight, because it's not if you're going to fight when in school here, it's when, this is going to happen. And other people's truth doesn't have to be the way that it always is. I didn't actually have to, I appreciate the skills and I appreciate that armament, but it didn't happen. Things weren't that going to, and much like what I hope will happen in the medical field, because at least it feels this way in the acting world right now. There's a lot of things that have changed. New actors coming up are actually really having a good time, really enjoying themselves, really being welcome, finding community. And it's not the same that it used to be. So I hope that those days of you teaching all of your up and comers that they're going to inevitably fight that racism. Maybe it won't have to happen all the time.
Yeah, that's right. And I do like our old ways, like our old teachings. And I do think that teaching of speak up for yourself is a good one. The old people used to say to me, you're a person, you have a voice. You're not like a squirrel or a dog that can't talk. You can talk. So we use our words. That's what we do as people. Mm-hmm. So you can tell me who you are and tell me what you're interested in and what you're thinking, or I can just make up things about you. So don't be shy. And that was our way. And I think that's a really great thing. So I do try to encourage my trainees. Yeah, don't be afraid to be yourself. Of course, don't say horrible things that hurt others. That's part of being a responsible person. Mm-hmm. But don't be afraid of others saying things that will hurt you. Yeah, try and be yourself. So I do see that authenticity now a lot more, including with you, which I just love.
Thank you. I mean, this is honestly, I wanted to kind of like fangirl out a bit, So that's really nice hearing that coming from you. With you walking these many worlds, I wanted to know, like, was there ever a point where your two careers came up against each other and didn't compromise, and you had to do one or the other? Which direction did you choose, and what do you think looking back on that?
Actually, my two careers collided a lot, and probably some of the most painful moments in my life were when when one wouldn't allow me to do the other. I had some big auditions I couldn't do just because I was, way too busy in the middle of my training. And it's like, okay, do you stop and prepare an audition for a big show that you have a little chance of getting, or you deal with, your patient with a life-saving issue, or with, family member who needs your care. And of course, the choice is obvious, but it hurts like crazy. It's, and especially when you see the show later, a big show, and you go, yeah, I was up for that, but I couldn't do it. There were so many. I remember I was up for I was offered a role with the BBC. And I went to my dean and I said, can I go and do this movie? And he said, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to let you go. And I said, it's a big movie. Mm-hmm. It's a chance of a lifetime. And he said, yeah, being a doctor is a chance of a lifetime. And he wouldn't let me go. And so I had to turn that project down, and they were not happy. I was not happy. And I went back to the wards, taking care of people, which is sometimes very hard, very thankless work. And I just felt bad, but you just have to keep moving. You can't win everything. Can't have everything.
Would you mind? I mean, or can we hear what was that show? Was it something that we would have heard of?
No, probably not, because there's an actor who replaced me who maybe doesn't know that we're filling in.
Okay, you just keep saving that person's ego. Oh, they came to me and offered me this role. First choice. Yeah.
Exactly. I could have done that movie. That's such a terrible story.
Oh, okay. Sparing their feelings and stuff. I'll ask you off the record later. Hey. um, I also heard a really funny story about your celebrity in the emergency room. Like you were treating someone who got stabbed.
Yes.
And yeah. Can you know this story?
No,
Good.
that
That's
was
great.
so
Can you
bad.
tell us about what was happening in this moment?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I'm a family doctor, so covering the emerge is like, well, you're a bit nervous.
Uh-huh.
Stabbings and shootings, scary. So this man came in with stab wounds, and I was running around. Luckily, there was another doctor on besides me, so we were collaborating. Like, how are we gonna deal with this? And it just kept getting worse. Like the case. It's like, oh, he's been stabbed, but he seems pretty well. Oh, actually, it was penetrating. Oh, there's blood in his chest, and oh, he's not looking so good right now. His vital signs are unstable. And in the midst of that, his daughters were like, "Oh my God, you're Evan Adams. Can we get a picture? Can we get a picture with you?" And I literally had their father's blood on me, and I was like, "No, it is not a good time right now. Let's not do this." Oh, I'm really busy. It was so bad. And again, I can't tell you who they were. Those poor daughters. Those poor daughters and that poor dad.
That poor dad. I mean, honestly though, that would have been the selfie of a lifetime. I mean, it would have been a very short life because he might have died. Like, hey, click. That was Dad's last photo right there in the background.
It was very strange because for a while there, I was not known as a doctor in any way. Nobody knew that I was studying, but people knew me as an actor, and they would see me dressed up in my white coat and my scrubs and my stethoscope, and they'd be like, "Why are you dressed like that?" First of all, what are you doing here in my hospital? And why are you dressed like that all the time? People thought I was lying. I was like, "Yeah, I'm training to be a doctor, or I'm a doctor now," and they'd be like,
Yeah, and you were still really young then too. Yeah, like Tonto Hauser, MD.
Oh, there's a story idea.
Yeah. That's great. I want to shout out a little segment here. I call it the red carpet, and this enables you to give a shout out to what's inspiring you in Indian country right now. It could be a person, could be an ally, could be a show that you're watching. Something that really fills up your spirit, makes you proud.
Can I give my shout out to other doctors who are working in Indigenous medical education?
100%, please do.
Yeah. I love Indigenous doctors because I know that they work really hard to be where they are, and also they get a lot of flack. Sometimes the Indigenous public, they're like, "Are you our friend or are you co-opted?" And, "Oh, I know you take care of me, but you should work harder to take care of me." So sometimes we get we work so hard. We sacrifice time with our parents and our kids, and it's a tough field, and our colleagues are sometimes not so nice to us. And then the patients are so overwhelming sometimes. And really, I get yelled at more than I get thanked as a doctor. It's the honest truth with my own people. So it's a tough gig. So the ones who are coming up who are really strong, I just love them because I know how hard they've worked to try and take care of you or take care of their communities. And it's really beautiful when you see people taking care of each other.
No, I agree. And we do need more Indigenous people, nursing. I have a lot of family that is in nursing as well. I actually worked the emergency room in Prince Albert admitting back in the day before I was an actor. And I got to see a lot of the wildness that can happen. Full moons are crazy times at the emergency room. It's weird. Yeah.
Isn't the Emerge a wild place?
It's a wild place. Yeah.
I love that. And I do think that looking after each other, because I think what you're doing is looking after people. I think that looking after each other is a very basic human experience. We all do it. You could be mean to me or, give me attitude, or you can just be really nice and just a good neighbor or a good friend, or treat me like I'm your cousin or family. I much prefer when people are kindly. I think it's really a really central human function, and lots of us are just mean, and I don't know why. You know, that kind of lateral violence that we talk about all the time. So yeah, when people are lovely, like, you know, you're being to me, I just admire that. I think that's a sign of a really great person.
Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate that lateral compliment. You know, it's true too. The fact that we're able to uplift each other. And I've had people in my life that were guilty of, you know, doing a lot of that lateral violence, but it's a lot of projecting too, and a lot of trauma that they're dealing with. And slowly they start turning around, you know? So I've seen some of that of people slowly able to sort of rebuild themselves and find that kindness that was buried away. So
that's nice. Thank you. I am learning to encourage that kind of sympathy, because actually that's what we need from our workers, and that's what we need from the younger generation of, say, movie actors, is that awareness that you're connected to a community and you should do good things, not do bad things with your fame or your education, but do, you know, really, really nice things. I really do think it's a core function. You can be a beautiful movie star, but if you're mean to your kids, like, really, are you that great? So yeah, we should all aspire to kindness, which we do.
This is lovely. I would normally end it here, but I got one more question that's actually like medically related, because I can't waste the opportunity to actually talk to a doctor. Sure. Not about me though. It's about the industry and the state of the world that we are in at the moment, because COVID hasn't actually gone away. Indigenous people were much more affected by it, in our communities being isolated and further away from treatments. It's causing still death, disablement, long-term COVID, long haulers. It affects the brain. And this is the thing that worries me. What I'm asking you as a doctor is, why should actors specifically be worried about COVID and Indigenous people, Indigenous actors?
Yeah, I'm glad we're still talking about COVID. Wasn't that hard? I remember March of 2020. That was tough, because I was at the Inspire Awards that weekend. It was a Friday, and by Sunday we're supposed to be self-isolating, and the world shut down. And I went to work, because I work in public health, and I was working 80 hours a week for almost 3 years. Really, I felt like I sacrificed my health to try and help people, and my job was to help look after First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities across the country. Really, what was happening was I would be looking after, say, 10 communities that were having terrible outcomes. You know, the chief would be crying on the call saying, help us, this is horrible. And it was very upsetting and traumatic. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm still recovering from all of that. And now the world has opened up again, right? Like, we're flying to conferences now and not wearing masks. And even in some hospitals, they don't even wear masks anymore. So yeah, I hope that we're still looking after each other. Yeah, like, I'm not embarrassed to say that, for instance, recently we met up with my elderly mother for her birthday, her 83rd birthday.
Happy birthday.
And we all got COVID. I didn't, but like a third of us at that gathering got COVID. So yeah, we're still handing it out. My mom was really sick, and we had to eat it. We had to be like, yeah, one of the family members gave our elderly mother COVID. Even in this day and age, we weren't careful enough.
No.
And we have to think about what we're doing. So yeah, it's still there. And I hope that we keep the lessons that we learned in the last 3 years. We can't just say, oh, we didn't learn anything, and go back to the way we were. We have to say, no, we learned something, and let's keep looking out for each other. We have aftermath, like people wanting to be around each other more than ever. People saying, I'll never wear a mask again. I'm sick of wearing masks. I want it to be 1980 again.
Yeah.
But we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
There we go. Keep care of each other out there, folks. You know, airplanes especially. I wear a mask all the time. Speaking of airplanes and everything and needing a break, somebody says that they're going to Hawaii.
Yes.
What's this about? What's happening?
I'm going to Hawaii for a year. I won a Harkness Fellowship, which is a research year. And I can go anywhere in the US. And I said, I'd like to go to Hawaii. The Native Hawaiian doctors are doing some extraordinary work, training other Native Hawaiians to become physicians, to work in their communities. And I feel like in Hawaii that they're not as well supported by the Hawaiian government as we are as First Nations people here in Canada. So how do we elevate more Native Hawaiians into health leadership? So I'm going to spend a year in Hawaii doing exactly fantastic. That. Yeah, it'll be fun. I know some people think it sounds like I'm going, on a beach holiday for a year. It's not really like that at all. I'm hoping it's going to be a very cultural, academic experience, maybe even spiritual. One of my mentors there, Dr. Emmett Oluli, he said, don't be like a mainlander when you come here. Like, learn the names of the birds that you hear in the morning. He said, go and look around and go swimming and see the fish. He said, love this place. Don't be like a mainlander who comes here and has no idea where they are. And I just love that, because that's what my dad would say. He said, this is your place. Like, you need to go and look around and don't be dumb.
That's amazing too. And I love that idea too, because I'm a big believer in the land back movement, and we get that through agency, and stop those mainlander guys like, what's his face, Zuckerberg, from buying up half of islands and all that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Well, I'm really happy for you being able to go out there and actually help uplift other folks out on the island. The fact that you'll get to learn the names of these beautiful birds and the fish doesn't hurt at all. And it's been a real treat, a real honor having you on the show. Tinege to you, Dr. Evan Adams, for coming here and telling us a little bit about your journey in both worlds here.
Ima, thank you so much for having me on and for letting me share my silly ideas and stories. It's really a gift.
Well, I'm sure that there are going to be some people out there that are just tickled pink that, they got to hear a bit more from you.
Thanks, JD.
Tinege. And that's it for us out there, Indian country. Okay. Hey, all you cousins out there, nephews, nieces, uncles, aunties. Listen, you want to be on the show? Then send us a little audio clip on actorsandancestors.com telling me the first time that you felt represented on screen. And it might be played just like this one.
I think growing up in some smaller communities and traveling to them when I was younger in northern Saskatchewan, it was really great to see a show like North of 60 come on the air.
That comes from Sean L. from Alberta. Wow, that is season 1 of Actors and Ancestors. Thank you very much, Dr. Evan Adams there. We had a great discussion, of course, talking about how our industry is evolving and changing. There's still things to fight. Racism still exists, but hey, we're getting better because of great veterans like him and others in that field, many other fields like medicine. And what a season we had. Our guests, Kaylee Reese, Daryl Dennis, Anna Lamb, Isabella Star LeBlanc, Defar Wunatai, Dr. Evan Adams, of course, to finish us off. That's season 1. And very excited about season 2, so stick with us. Thank you for listening to Actors and Ancestors, a podcast spotlighting Indigenous actors and their stories. This show was hosted, produced, and created by me, Joel Desmontgrain. Audio editing and production support by Daniela Barreto. Please check out our website, www.actorsandancestors.com, for more information about the show and each of our guests. A giant thank you to the Indigenous Screen Office for supporting Actors and Ancestors by awarding me a podcasting grant to keep the show going. Tinege. Nagose.